welcome to the inaugural episode of InGalactic's Opinion. Now basically this show is going to kind of have a news feel to it, but basically it's just going to be me talking about some of the stuff that mattered in the news to me and my opinion on it. So I'm not really going to be covering a vast gamut of news topics, as it's just too hard to research, as many a YouTuber have found out. However, this week in particular we've seen some great news videos from both Total OS Today and Linux for You and Me, so I'll put links to those in the show notes that you can check them out later. As for me, I'm just going to be talking about some of the stuff that I liked in the news and my opinions thereof. So feel free to enjoy, and if not, just click somewhere else and you can get distracted somewhere. So the first topic of what I want to talk about today is the big scandal of Windows UEFI. Basically, Windows 8 developer preview came out some time ago. Now, of course, there has been development done on Windows 8 for quite some time now, and it is starting to show some fruits. Now, one of those such fruits is that they're wanting to improve the boot experience for Windows 8. They're wanting to get a much shorter boot time. Basically, the way to do this is to create a much more trimmed down boot experience, if you will. Now, previously, of course, this was known as the BIOS, but since BIOS is getting a bit old and clunky, it is just an antiquated piece of technology. Now they are building UEFI. Now, UEFI is kind of similar to Mac OS X in what they do with EFI, except UEFI is a much more streamlined boot approach, and it cuts out a lot of the middleman in between. The problem with that is that in order for your UEFI to boot your system, you need a signed key. This is only going to be something that comes with Windows 8, therefore consumers are only going to be able to boot Windows 8 off their machine and no other operating system. Now this, of course, caused tremendous waves in the open source community, as people were concerned that they would not be able to run their favorite Linux distribution of choice. Now this went back and forth, and basically the outcome is that yeah, you're not going to be able to, at least by default. A Red Hat engineer went out and said, no, this really locks down the user experience and doesn't allow us to boot Linux at all, or any other operating system for that matter. But then Windows came out and went like, man, you're making a big deal out of it, it's got nothing to do with that, and the flame wars went back and forth as to whether this thing was actually going to happen or not. However, it appears from the research that I've done, it appears that this particular technology is going to be something that you can either enable or disable. It will be enabled by default, but basically it is a setting that you can apparently turn off. Now the alternatives to this is that the OEMs, or the manufacturers of the individual piece of hardware, can turn this feature off by default or add signing keys to allow for other bootloaders. Now since OEMs probably aren't going to do that because they're too buddy-buddy with Windows, that may or may not be happening anytime soon. So that leaves the rest of us with the question of, is this thing going to affect our everyday systems? My long considered opinion is no. It really is a bit of a storm in the teacup at this point. It is something that we will be able to enable or disable, apparently. And of course, the second it comes out, the community is going to have a hack around it, just like every other piece of technology that's ever happened. So as soon as Windows 8 PCs comes out, we'll be looking at you, hacker community, to sort out the intricacies of this UEFI. Moving right along to mobile Linux news. Now, one thing that really did catch my attention this previous week was, of course, the announcement that MeeGo was practically dead. It was really a merge between Moblin and Maemo. Moblin being, of course, from Intel, and Maemo being from Nokia. They combined, they split apart again, and it all kind of crumbled, and really they only put out one device, which is the Nokia N9. Not a bad device, I might say, but doesn't really have any longevity in the long term. Oh, I just realized how redundant that was. But of course, no sooner does one open source project kiss the dust, then one comes and picks up right where it left off. And that is where Tizen OS comes in. Now, Tizen OS is basically the remains of MeeGo that Intel has held on to, and Samsung has come along and joint ventured with them to create a mobile Linux operating system for their handheld devices. Now, basically, this OS is going to be more centered around HTML5 web-based APIs, and I'm sure Samsung is probably going to have this on a device in the foreseeable 5-year possible future, whenever they decide to get their act together, and you know how these things work. But what is encouraging to see is the fact that even though one open source project has died, that we do have another one in the works now. Finally, I want to talk about Gnome 3.2, because Gnome 3 has been quite a controversial release ever since it came out about a year ago, not quite. However, with Gnome 3.2, the operating system has matured quite a bit, and we are seeing significant improvements on the usability and just the sheer stability and loveliness of the operating system. What is really nice to see now is that we're starting to see some integration between online accounts and the operating system itself. No third-party apps, it's all tied into the one operating system. This makes this for a very consistent user experience, and I'm going to be keen to get my hands on it in the very near future. Another really nice feature is the Sushi File Previewer. Now basically just think Glubus Preview except tailored specifically for GNOME 3. That's about it really, but it comes with the core desktop, so that's pretty cool. We also have a web app infrastructure now available for Epiphany, which is the standard GNOME web browser. Now basically what you can do now is whenever you're on a website, you can enable the web app mode, and it will just condense that frame down to a web app, which you can then launch through the normal application launcher of, you know, GNOME apps. Nice touch of technology, and I'm definitely looking forward to where this can go in the future. Not too big a fan of everything being on the web, but we can't win everything, can we? The user menu has also undergone some nice tweaks, so has the GNOME login manager. It now looks much prettier than it has before. Documentation has been updated, network manager has been improved, the on-screen keyboard has now undergone a bit of work as well, make it look a bit prettier, and overall GNOME desktop is moving right along. Well, thank you guys for watching. That's really all that mattered in the news this week to me. If you can be bothered following with whatever random bit of open source or fun news that I might find around the interwebs, you can follow me on Twitter, which is #ingalactic, or just dump a comment down in the comment section below, which brings us to the question of the day, which is, if you wanted to see a feature in GNOME 3, what would it be? What kind of functionality would you want to see built into the desktop? Let us know in the comments below or on Twitter. Let me know what you think about this style of video. It's not quite a news recap as in the more formal set. It's just me talking about some of the stuff I like. Honestly, it's a bit more fun for me to do, and maybe it's a bit more entertaining for you guys. Let me know what you think down below. Thanks again so much for watching and supporting this channel. We now have over 1,800 subscribers, which is fantastic. And more distro reviews will be on the way. OpenSUSE 12.1 beta has come out, so I will be having a look at that sometime very soon, as well as Ubuntu 11.10 eventually. Alright, peace out guys.